I think it is a lot to ask of someone who has an injury in the past and has never experienced lifting weights to throw them straight to the squat
Yeah.
rack. We can just stick to machines. We can just stick to Smith machine. We can stick to the leg extension. We can still do something with that. That's better than nothing. Eventually, sometimes I feel fine trying like free weights down the road.
Welcome to the V-Shred Better Body, Better Life podcast, where we help you live your best life while working on your health and fitness goals. We're here to make your journey fun and inspiring.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Better Body, Better Life podcast. I'm your host, Vince, and today we are welcomed by one of our accelerator coaches, Chania Whitaker. She is a doctor of chiropractic, certified personal trainer, been working with us for a little while now. And today we're going to be talking about something that I am very familiar with, that she's going to speak to very well as well, which is how to recover from an injury mentally. Which I think is obviously like the physical aspect of recovering from an injury is huge. Like you have to do that part, but the mental side of things is also very big. And so if you're dealing with an injury or you have in the past and you still haven't recovered from it, or you're in the middle of recovery right now, you're in the middle of rehab, this is going to be the episode for you. So stay tuned. But Chania, welcome.
Hello.
So go ahead and
you.
Let's just start this same way. We actually did another episode with Chania, if you guys want to check that out, where we talked about like staying disciplined. But I know I just kind of introduced you a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and just continue that introduction and tell us why you want to get into an episode talking about recovering from an injury with the mental side of things.
Of course. So like Vince said, I am a chiropractor, and part of the training that I went through with that, I realized helped me so much as a online coach that I didn't really think about too much. But one of those that we're going to talk about today is getting over injuries on the mental side. I think people forget that when you go through an injury, it's way more than just physically getting over it.
Big time.
And we actually, we learned a lot about that in school. And I think because chiropractic just generally looks at the full body and, as a person as a whole, and not just kind of pieces of as a puzzle, we also look at pain and injuries the same way. And I saw that popping up a lot with my clients online, how injuries would still affect them, 10, 20 years down the road.
And when you say affect them, you mean physically and mentally?
Yeah, sometimes just mentally, but in any capacity.
Yeah. And so what is like, have you ever dealt with injuries? I know on the last episode we talked about how you grew up like an athlete, right? You played a bunch of different sports. Were there any times that you dealt with an injury, and how did you personally process those emotions? And versus also, maybe that's one half of the question. And then if you had a really good mindset back then, maybe it hasn't changed. But if it has, how did you process the emotions back then versus how do you process the emotions now when you experience an injury?
Yeah, I feel like I have some interesting injuries. So I did cross country in high school, hurt my knee, and then track, they got me into hurdles. Fell, hurt my ankle, or maybe it was cheerleading, I don't know. But like 10 years ago, I got my first concussion. So that was a completely different injury. Of course it's mental, but like not so much like, oh, now I'm walking weird. That kind of effect cognitively. So I was dealing with very different injuries, and the mindset of getting over those. And I will say I still can have lingering effects from all three.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I find it interesting, actually. When I was younger, I was more concerned about just getting back into the game or getting back to my normal self, or, where I was before. Now, my mindset around it is, okay, I know I have these things going on. How do I make my life as easy as I can while keeping those in mind so it doesn't make them worse or doing something extra to improve upon those things.
Yeah, no,
So
it's funny you say that because like I talk about this all the time. It's like I love playing sports as well. I grew up playing sports. I grew up doing just crazy stuff, and I love like extreme activities even to this day. But like the approach that I take, or the approach that I took back in the day versus the approach that I take now, and the things that I would have done back then versus the things that I do now. And if I had an injury back in the day, how I would recover from it versus how I recover now is completely different. And I can contribute that to my frontal lobe for the most part. I think that like everybody's frontal lobe, I think your frontal lobe doesn't fully develop until you're like, what, 18 or 20 or something like that. And so like
25, 26.
Oh, it's 25 or 26. So like until then, you're like, I don't care. Like I'm sending this jump.
Exactly.
I'm trying to get back to whatever it is that hurts you as quickly as possible versus now I'm like, I should probably warm up before I go play pickleball. And it's like, what are you, 50? It's like, no, I'm just, I know my body and I know I need to warm up a little bit. And so I approach it completely differently now. And I've had a bunch of injuries as well. And my injuries when I was a kid, like I broke my collarbone when I was like 14 years old, and I got right back to it after I was skiing. And yeah, I was like, I'm ready to go again, like as quickly as I could versus like now I'm like, okay, how do we make sure this never happens again? And I'm like a little more like, it's funny, like I broke my collarbone when I was 14 and I wanted to get right back out there. And then I dislocated my AC joint probably 2 years ago. And now when I go, and that was also snowboarding. And now when I go snowboarding, like that's like kind of in the back of my mind. And I'm like, should I be going this fast? I need to be a lot more careful with how I turn. I'm not really trying to send big jumps because I'm worried about getting hurt versus before I was like, I'm just going to send, like I would BMX, I'm just going to send this jump as high and as far as and as fast as I can and wouldn't care what happened. And that's changed a lot. How do you process those emotions differently now?
Yeah, I think kind of the same way. I think when I was injured younger, I was like, oh, well, this sucks. Oh, well, let's keep going. Now I definitely still have like my ups and downs, especially when it comes to my concussion, just because I think that particular like injury is very encompassing of how it affects my daily activities of life.
Yeah.
But
how does it
a lot of
affect your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so I got my first concussion 10 years ago. Another one when I was cheerleading, they dropped me 4 years after. And then I just got one last year. So it's kind of just racking them up at this point.
Wow.
And I think the last one, it wasn't that bad. Because I did have a baseline of everything and it hasn't changed much after that. But for me, it affects how I read. So when you're reading a book, your eyes track, left to right. Mine will kind of go up and down and all over the page.
Whoa.
But I have ways to get around it. I've been dealing with it for a decade.
What do you do to get around that? Do you go to therapy for it or?
Yeah, I have like some rehab things to help with eye tracking. Funny enough, we were just talking about video games, but video games actually helps train my eye tracking.
Huh.
And then another one right after the concussion, I had really bad mood swings. Like I was really irritable. I have the best group of friends because they dealt with that. I would just blow up out of nowhere. And then, but I don't have that too much now. And then sometimes I have problems with speech and like word recall. So I'll just like forget a word or I'll forget a name of somebody that I'm very close to. But when that happens, I just have grace for myself. And I try not to, get too worked up over it.
Yeah. And has that been something that has kind of improved? Like, does it improve? I've never gotten a concussion before. Is it something that improves with time? Like in the beginning, right when it happens, it's really bad, and then after a couple months, it's a little bit better. After a year, it's a little bit better. Like, how's that work?
It just depends on, the severity, your rehab after it, and then if you do anything to help daily. I definitely have brain exercises that I could be doing daily, but I don't do them as much as I should.
What's an example of a brain exercise?
So I have like 2 pages of numbers of 1 through 30, and they're all around the page scattered. And what I have to do is look at the left one, find the one, look at the other one, find the one on the other side, and keep going until I reach 30. So it's just about
and that just helps
tracking.
Okay, I was gonna say tracking eye movement.
Yes, because the eyes are really the window to the brain. So when you train your eyes, helping with the brain.
So you're saying my video games help me mentally? That's what I'm hearing.
They do help with tracking.
I'll tell my girlfriend that.
I don't know if you can co-sign. I won't co-sign that, but it does help with certain processes in the brain, and makes you, helps with tracking, definitely.
So what other injuries have you had?
Ankle from hurdling, fell on the hurdles, and knee from cross country. That just was not my sport. I'm a track person. That's my main thing, and I just tried out cross country and hurt myself.
Just to stay in shape. That's kind of what I did as well. I hated cross country, but I ran in high school as well just to stay in shape for volleyball. I literally just wanted another varsity letter, and I was only as good as I needed to be the last person on varsity, and didn't practice a second longer to even get, like, there was 7 varsity spots. I was number 7, and I didn't care about being number 6. I just wanted a varsity letter because I did not care about being better at running. Funny, now I am a runner, but yeah. So have you dealt with any injuries in your adult life?
Well, yeah, the concussion I got last year.
Okay.
But
like no soft tissue injuries or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, things that just come from, lifting weights, and to be honest, probably lots of small injuries. Just being in school as a chiropractor, we sacrifice our own bodies to help each other learn how to adjust, and students are not the best adjusters. Go figure.
Oh wow. So like
definitely got injured from that.
Oh wow, that's actually scary. So
no, I mean, it's not anything serious, just like okay, now I'm sore for a week.
Okay. You're not like so in the chiropractic world, are there more dangerous adjustments than others? I assume there are. And then you just maybe
I will.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, definitely. We could get into that. I mean, everyone talks about, I'm so afraid to get my neck adjusted. As long as,
but like adjusting your neck has to have a higher probability. Like even if it's a super low probability, has to be somewhat higher than adjusting your ankle. Is that right?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, because there's more things going on up there, but it's so low. We always kind of have a joke in chiropractic world that our malpractice insurance is like cheaper than like dentists and PTs, like because it doesn't happen. It rarely happens, and actually the most common like malpractice thing that goes through is because someone got burned from a hot towel.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
So, yeah. But, things can happen with the neck, but that's why you just make sure you do a full exam before, and there's,
make sure the student's not a shitty student who's performing it on you. Is their first time?
Students are not included in that stat. Okay. But we're practicing on each other, and we're being, supervised. And if, someone hurts your neck, the teacher can come and fix it. But
yeah. So, okay. Because I've dealt with injuries as a kid, and then I've dealt with actually more injuries since being an adult. And my approach with my mindset has changed since I've just matured. And like I said, my frontal lobe has developed, but it's also led to I would say, some anxiety around re-injury. And so getting into that, what would you say to somebody who is, or what would you say there like are some like tips for somebody who is worried that they are going to re-injure something?
Well, I think it's important to take every case one by one. And it just really depends how anxious they are and also how they injured themselves. Obviously, if I'm dealing with, someone who had my injury of like from my ankle, like I got my ankle hurt from jumping hurdles. I'm not jumping hurdles every day, so I don't have to worry. I don't have as much anxiety around movement of my ankle versus if someone injured themselves doing something they do every day, or I think something common I run into is people injuring themselves from lifting weights,
Yep.
and that actually will keep them from doing that same lift ever again.
Yep.
Um,
I've done that.
so that's the first step. And then either asking, well, for example, if you hurt yourself doing a squat, I'm like, okay, well, show me how you're squatting.
Yep.
So it's can be a period of like education, and then also validating them of saying, I understand why you don't want to do that again, because that's how you hurt yourself. But now you have the guidance and now you have help, and we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. Or it's a little difficult, not difficult, but different just online. Sometimes I just, I'm like, you know what, we can just work around it. So you don't have to have that fear, and build their confidence around lifting weights, doing other similar lifts. Like say if they hurt themselves with squats, like, okay, well, would you feel comfortable just doing a squat in a chair? Like you sit down in a chair every day. So once they feel comfortable with that, then they might want to try a squat
Progress
again.
up, right?
Yeah, it's really individualized with that. So.
And then as far as like that journey towards improving, so you said like if they hurt themselves doing a squat, like for me, for example, I tore my pec bench pressing. It was just like a barbell bench press. I had a good amount of weight on it, but it wasn't like my max or anything like that. It was just, I don't think I had rested enough leading up to that session. And then I think there's also probably a little bit of an imbalance in my shoulders. I mean, there definitely is. I broke this collarbone and dislocated this AC joint. And so like this shoulder is all jacked up. But, and so I think a lot of that goes into my left pec more than my right pec. And so that's the pec that I tore when I was pushing this weight. And it was quite a long recovery. There was another one where I slipped a disc in my back. I herniated one of my discs, and that was the worst injury I've ever had. I think that was probably 4 or 5 months of just not being able to do anything. Just like sitting around doing like my physical therapy after like a month or two, so probably a month or two of doing nothing, then physical therapy. And then I finally like lightly got back into the gym at like 6 months, which was crazy for me. How important is mindset when facing the reality of how long recovery might be? Because like I know for myself, I lost, like we talked about, like that sense of worth, like when it comes to like, or like your purpose. Like fitness is a huge part of my life, and when I lost the ability to do anything fitness related, I lost a huge piece of my life, you know? And so like I had to make sure that I was like staying on top of my mental health, and I had to keep reminding myself of how long this journey was going to be, so that I could like actually like keep doing these boring, hard exercises every single day to make my back a little healthier each day, so that eventually I could hopefully squat just the bar again, you know, or whatever. And actually I dislocated I herniated a disc picking up a 10-pound dumbbell. So like there was a little trauma involved with that as well. And so like anytime I'm going to pick up anything, there's like that little bit of anxiety in me where it's like, okay, we're going to make sure that we're picking this up the right way always. And so what are some steps somebody can take to mentally prepare for that journey, or some strategies somebody can instill in themselves, or habits or whatever that are going to help them get through that?
I think, yeah, I guess I'm finding it difficult to answer that question just because it's so personalized and you
Right.
really have to look at everything surrounding that person. But generally speaking, recognizing that your pain and recovery is way more than just physical. I think sitting down and really understanding that can help with kind of understanding what's going on, because someone who's dealing with other issues such as like financial or no support at home or whatever, they're going to experience more pain and a longer recovery time versus someone who has that support.
Hmm.
So if there's ways to improve like the social factors surrounding that, or even and then, the motivation and self-talk that also can add to the pain. So it sounds so sad, but it's better to be aware of it so you can improve it than just kind of going in being like, oh, well, I injured my back. If I do these PT things or whatever, and I just do these rehab, everything will be fine. And then when you're going down that road, you realize other things are popping up, and feelings of shame or guilt or,
Hmm.
questions of self-worth pop up. Now it's not so much of a surprise. You kind of are equipped to deal with it. Um, but so definitely seeing the whole picture of what pain is can help. And also just knowing that this is temporary.
Yep.
And also having some type of appreciation of your body helps. Like, yes, you might have slipped a disc, or yes, you might have done this, but it's because you didn't, it was done so that to prevent an even worse injury. Like, our bodies are very smart. And if that had to go out, it was because it was protecting something, much more important.
Interesting. Yeah.
So being like, okay, I am resilient. I have a great body that knows how to heal itself, and it just needs some support and time and all of that. But things can get back to baseline or close to it.
So are you a fan of like cause those kind of sounded like affirmations? Are you like a fan of that?
I am. I wish I did them more. I wish I did them every day, but they do help. Because what you tell your mind, your body listens to. And sometimes it's, when I kind of go back and forth from, online trainer to working with patients as a chiropractor, and it's not the most wise to tell the person that comes in for the first visit and they are like 9 out of 10 pain to be like, have you practiced your meditation and your affirmations that you're actually okay? Like, they will probably cuss me out. So
I didn't
it's
come here
just
for spiritual lesson. Just crack me, doc.
yeah, exactly. People in pain are so they can be so grumpy. So getting them out of that pain and then working with them at that level. But if you're someone who's not injured yet or recovering from an injury, it's easier to tell them more about mindset and keeping positive during the experience. But you don't really know until you're actually in the experience.
Yeah. And then that helps with I think the biggest piece of it that's tough is being patient. I think like that was the hardest thing for me. I think as humans, we're all very impatient by nature. Like, if I gave you 2 options and one's faster than the other, you're going to pick that one, whether it's getting in shape, making money, falling in love, whatever it is. You're always going to pick the faster option because you want it now. When you injure yourself and you're recovering, you're going to want to recover fast. And so I think reminding yourself of what you said, like being mindful and having those like mindfulness practices to tell yourself, hey, like this is temporary. We're going to do what we need. Like the thing that I always say is like the most important step is the next one. Like if you have 1,000 stairs to walk up, can you take one more step? If so, take that step. It's like I listened to this, one of my buddies just ran a 100-mile ultra marathon, and he had never ran that far before. I think his furthest run before that was like a marathon. And so he's running 4 times as long. And he was basically just like, it was hard. And there were times that I felt like I needed to quit, but I just told myself, can you take one more step? And I took one more step. And then I was like, can you take one more step? And I took one more step. And so somebody can have that mindset with their injuries. And I can speak from personal experience that if you can just get by the next day and keep focusing, keep your head down, you're eventually going to look up and you're going to be 5 years in the future. You're going to be all healed up and you're going to be all healthy again, as long as, like you said, you had the right help. Because I think, yeah, this is a tough topic just because like we can't talk to anybody individually right now because we don't know what somebody's individually going through. We don't know what caused their injury. We don't know how bad the pain is. We don't know what their limitations are. And so we have to speak super general right now. But in general, if you can teach yourself a little bit of patience, if you can be kind to yourself, then that's going to help you progress and that's going to help you eventually heal, you know? But also we kind of mentioned at the beginning, like when you're helping somebody in person, like, and you can speak to this probably better than anybody because as you just said, you go from helping clients online to helping patients in person. And so when you are working with a client online, how do you help clients with injuries just through online training?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good time to kind of introduce what we call it, the biopsychosocial model of pain. So first there's the biological factor of like tissues, bones, whatever being injured. The psychological of like, kind of what you discussed, like kind of avoiding certain things or causes emotional stress, but then also the social factors of what community support do they have, what's their cultural influences, what's their personal ideas surrounding pain and injuries. So keeping in mind that all 3 of those things are in play when you're talking to someone about past injuries or current injuries or anything about pain is really important. So I try to get a feel for all 3 of those things. So when I'm talking to someone new, I'll be like, okay, well, like I could see it's really interesting when I see the questionnaire and I'll say, okay, I have disc in my cervical spine blown. I have a disc in my thoracic spine. All of this, they could have all of these injuries, but when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I'm fine. I just thought you needed to know that, but it doesn't affect me, and it's fine." Or you'll have someone who has like, "Okay, I have carpal tunnel," and I'll get on a call with them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't even do anything with my
Yeah.
hands. It's so horrible." So yes, it matters what the injury is, but talking to them to see where they are, their mindset around it, how they feel, and how it affects them daily is really important. So that's always my first step. And then if it's, an old injury, okay, how can we work around it in a way where you're not super uncomfortable? Because, I can't be there in person to make sure they're not injuring themselves. So if anything, I'd rather take the safe bet of like avoiding the movement that
Yep.
caused the injury until they either feel comfortable or if they're working with a doctor. Or I actually had a call with one of my clients and their physical therapist was there too.
I was literally
And she
just
was,
about to ask you that. Like if you ever had anybody who has a physical therapist on the side helping to recover from injury, if you work directly with that doctor or physical therapist to get them through something.
yeah. She was on the call, so we were talking. It was kind of cool because I could like, okay, so we're not going to do this, and she's like, okay, so let's avoid. She's telling me like she can only do this much hip abduction, or let's avoid these types of movements. And I'm like, okay, easy. And she's like, okay, and then this is my care plan for her. Um, so,
That's great.
and I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I really, it's sometimes it can get that involved. Um, or, they give me what PT exercises they had from years ago. And then I can kind of get an idea of how can I structure a workout just based off of what they have for rehab. Um, so I try to be as helpful as I can with as much information that's given. But sometimes it's just as simple as someone getting on a Zoom call and like raising their arm and saying, "This is how much motion I have," and that's it.
Interesting. And then as far as like them seeing progress with that, like I think most people who get injured don't see a physical therapist. I think that's unfortunate, but I think that's the reality. And so first, I'm assuming the average person who comes to you with an injury has just dealt with it themselves and kind of stayed away from the gym, stayed away from that exercise, and just kind of rested until they felt a little bit better. What advice do you give clients on like helping them set like realistic expectations when it comes to trying to get in shape while managing this injury or recovering from this injury?
If they're recovering, I always say we'll work within the limitations that were given to you. Like, I always go with whatever doctor's clearance, because at the end of the day, I'm not seeing these people in person. I say I am a doctor, but I'm not your doctor.
I was gonna say,
so
most people go, I'm not a doctor. I can't, but you can literally say I'm a doctor. So,
but I'm like, I'm not yours. I haven't assessed you physically. So trusting what was given to you by that doctor will go off of that. So sometimes they'll say, my doctor said I can't lift weights for this long. And I'm like, well, ask them if bands are okay. Or just like giving them, sometimes it's just kind of prepping them for the conversation of what the clearance looks like. It's like, okay, well, ask them if bands are okay, or if you can do walking, or ask when to do this. It's like, oh, well, I never thought to even talk to them about that. So sometimes it's just being like an advocate when I didn't even think I would be in those situations, but it's nice to kind of help facilitate that type of conversation. But if it's an old injury, just seeing how much they can move, usually it doesn't affect them where they can't make the same amount of progress as someone without injuries. So that's usually not an issue.
and then do you find like the approach or the challenges are different for somebody who is, let's say, newer to working out versus somebody who is much more familiar with working out?
Yes. Definitely if they are new to lifting weights and they have an injury and they might not feel super comfortable doing certain workouts, just for form wise, they'll watch the video and they'll have the video of you doing like a 10-second workout, like a example of how to do the exercise. And sometimes they still don't feel super confident in themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, how about we just do machine only? Like, I know until you feel more confident. And then, or I've done it for some clients if if they're really having an issue, like I'll record a video of me going into detail of how to keep your back safe during a squat, or here's how to properly do a deadlift. Because there's really only like, 6 or 7 common movement patterns. And I feel like once you get that down,
Kind of understand how
they're
to
all kind of, yeah.
brace yourself and stuff.
So, exactly. So I'll talk about breathing and then how to do deadlift, squat, or push pull. And after that, they'll feel more comfortable, but still keeping the weight light. And, they'll share a picture or a video of themselves doing it just for like form correction if really needed. But yeah, it's really just making sure people feel confident in their form so that you're not like, oh no, I'm going to injure myself again, or I don't feel like I'm doing this right. And sometimes it honestly looks like if you are this afraid of, and you don't feel this like comfortable at all, we can just stick to machines. We can just stick to Smith machine. We can stick to the leg extension. Like we can still do something with that. That's better than nothing. Eventually, sometimes I feel fine trying like free weights down the road, but I think it is a lot to ask of someone who has an injury in the past and has never experienced lifting weights to throw them straight to the squat rack. Yeah.
No, and especially the squat rack. Like, I think that's probably the most intimidating exercises are squats, because most people are hurt when they do squats. And then therefore They go, I don't do squats because they hurt my knees. And it's like, well, maybe you should figure out why they hurt your knees, because everybody should be able to squat. You go to Asia and you got 90-year-old people who are squatting down, like butt touching the grass just to hang out. Like they're just eating their lunch, sitting in a squat position. And you're like, everybody has that ability. It's just you're so limited by sitting in a chair all day and not doing anything to keep your hips mobile, keep your knees mobile, keep your ankles mobile, that you're not able to do it anymore. But you should be able to. It shouldn't be off limits for anybody. But I say that, but I also don't do barbell bench press anymore, because that's how I tore my pec. And I advise against doing barbell bench press for anybody who is not trying to be a power lifter, because I have experienced it now, and I know a bunch of other people who have experienced tearing their pec from barbell bench press, because it is quite a dangerous exercise when you're going very heavy. And there are studies showing much lower risk of injury and much less number of injuries with dumbbell bench press. And you get a you get a better contraction, because it's not a fixed position with the bar. And so like that is an injury that I will say that I have completely eliminated from my training program, but everything else I will not. Like I said, I herniated a disc in my back and I was really not back to the gym full time for 9 months after that. And I did it picking up a 10-pound dumbbell. And then I think probably a year later, I think it was like a year on the dot, I was deadlifting. I deadlifted like 495 for the first time, and then I was squatting 315. And so like I got back to full strength, but it took some mental resilience to like build that confidence back up doing those movements. Like I didn't start super heavy. I went through the proper physical therapy, and then I started super light, and then I built on top of that. And so, yeah, that's why I asked like the difference in how you treat that recovery process, or that mental, like that advice that you give to somebody who is really familiar with the gym, such as myself, versus someone like maybe my mom, who has been to the gym plenty in her life, but I wouldn't necessarily call her like a fitness guru by any means, who absolutely, like, she doesn't love going to the gym. She doesn't think of fitness as like her identity, versus I do. And so like the mental hurdles that she goes through versus the mental hurdles that I go through are going to be pretty different. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, yeah. Especially if you make fitness your identity.
Yeah, no, that was the toughest part, honestly. And then, yeah, like now I have like anxiety around doing barbell bench press. Like I just won't do it. And I have a little bit of anxiety when I go heavy with dumbbell bench press, because I tore my pec, and that was very painful, and it was traumatizing. And I see it every single time I see my pec. I have that little indentation. And whenever anything feels a little bit weird, I'm like, oh shit, am I about to tear my pec again? And so it's like this thing that I still have yet to overcome. And so if anybody is dealing with that similar trauma to injuries, it's okay. I think, but yeah, like we said, like most exercises we shouldn't avoid. There are going to be some exercises that are more dangerous than others, but most we want to try to get back to. And squats and deadlifts. I mean, I think like a hex bar deadlift is going to be a lot more safe than like a conventional deadlift, just because it puts your back in a safer position. But I think everybody should be doing those big compound movements, because those are going to be how you get the most bang for your buck, you know? And then other thing I want to ask you, we talked a bit about a support system on our other episode, which if you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you do. But how important is having a support system during recovery, and how can it influence your mental outlook?
Yeah. So I think when people hear you need a support system recovering from an injury, it's really easy to just be like, oh, yeah, I need someone to help me do these things while I'm physically incapable of doing it, which, yes. But you also need more support to kind of address the other two factors of the biopsychosocial, so psycho and social. Um, just, it's nice to have someone to help physically, but also when you're having those days of kind of, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this ever again, it's nice to have someone to get you out of the echo chamber.
Love that.
Especially, some injuries do just hit harder than others. Like, I didn't really need much social support for my knee, but
Yeah.
when it came to my concussions, I needed a lot of support. Thankfully, I had it. I don't know, especially my first one, that was tough. And having a group of people that understand what your limitations are, but not making you feel worse about it, or I guess I'm still only talking from my own experience of concussion, because that that might be a lot different than because I was, I'll be honest, I was being horrible for like 1 or 2 weeks, or maybe even longer.
That's not that bad though. A couple weeks.
But no, like, to my friends, the mood swings,
just not nice.
I remember one day, maybe I don't remember, I think someone told me this, but I was just sitting in a room and I was staring at my keys and I needed my keys, and I like screamed at my friend. I was like, hand me my keys. And she's like, okay. And like, I think everyone understood. They're like, she's just concussed, just let her be.
Wow.
I apologize afterwards, but it was, maybe I wasn't just angry. There was also a point where the first week of my concussion, which is so interesting how fast research is, because that was just 10 years ago, and now it's completely understood that this is not how you deal with concussions. It's actually horrible. But I was sitting in a dark room, not doing anything for a week. Don't do that. You should not do that.
You're not supposed to do that. Why are you not supposed to do that?
You're not, because so you think like, oh, I'm resting the brain, but I'd have to look back into it. But that's just, you want to do something to stimulate the brain, but just sitting in a dark room doing nothing.
Like the exercises you talked about.
Exactly. It's kind of like how we used to think.
You're almost feeding the injury if you do nothing. Is that kind of?
Yeah. It's kind of like how we used to think that icing something and elevating it and then leaving it alone was the best thing. But what's actually better is to slowly do mobility exercises.
And let it naturally inflame.
Yeah. So same thing with the brain. So I was sitting in this dark room and they would let me color like 30 minutes out of the day. And then I could see my friends for like another 30 minutes.
Crayons? You're in a psych ward.
That's it. I felt like it. It was horrible. So of course when my friends came, I was like so sad. They're like, what is wrong with her? Like, what is she? She's going through something horrible. So when I came out, I was just so ecstatic to be out of, what felt like jail. But I really do attribute a lot of my recovery to my support group, because they never made me feel worse about my healing recovery. Now I think, 10 years now, they're like, yeah, remember when the nurses called your parents and they were talking about how things were going, and you'd be like, oh yeah, everything's fine. And we would like interrupt and be like, no, like it was, you thought you were doing a lot better. But like, anyways, something we can laugh about now, but in another injury such as like back and injury or whatever, like, you know, other parts of the body, um, definitely having people, say if you injured yourself at the gym and you can't necessarily do certain things with your gym bro if you have one, maybe them being like, well, let's do this, or like, let's switch up. So you still feel included and not like things are so different just because of my injury. It's really just having people that are, what is the word? Patient and understanding helps so much for morale.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Cause I mean, I generally work out alone, but like I have a good friend of mine is my physical therapist, and yeah, he kind of like reaffirms all the things that like I'm probably a little, I don't know, I guess in my head about, where it's like I tore my pec and I immediately FaceTimed him and I'm like, I think I just tore my pec or dislocated the AC joint. FaceTimed him immediately. I'm like, I think I broke my shoulder. And he's like, looks like AC joint dislocation. Go to the ER. And so like he was there to like, just help me really. And he was kind of now that I look back on it, like he was kind of my support system. And just like my friends around me were like the support system to like, let me know that like, it's like, I almost felt guilty for being injured. Cause like for me, it's a little bit different. And I try not to talk too much about personal experience or like just personal stuff, just because like I feel like a lot of people can't necessarily, I guess, relate to like the pressure that I put on myself to be in shape because it's my job. And so it's like if I put pressure on a firefighter to be able to fight fires, he's like, it's my job, but like I don't care about knowing how to fight fires. And so it's like, for me, I have to be in shape. And so I felt almost guilty sometimes for injuring myself. And I had that support system to let me know that like, basically it's okay. And it's going to take some time to get through this. And and like, I think the important piece is like making sure that you have a road to go down. Like you have a plan in place. I think that's going to be huge. There's too many times I've heard about like my dad is a perfect example. Like I remember I found out just through the grapevine that he herniated 3 discs. And I was like, when, how, like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just not doing anything. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to golf again. And I'm like, Dad, get help. I'm like, go figure out a recovery plan. Like go see if, and so I called my physical therapist and I said, yo, find me a physical therapist in Ohio. He went to look at him. He's been seeing a chiropractor. He saw a physical therapist. And so like, he's been doing stuff and he's fine now. But like, I was like, how are you just going to like not have a plan in place? So yeah, I guess my advice would be for anybody who's dealing with an injury is just to have somebody to go to. Hopefully you have insurance and you can use that. If not, find a friend who knows a little bit, if you're lucky enough to know somebody who's a physical therapist, amazing. But just figure out a way to get better. Do not just like, yes, the body will heal itself, but you also are just going to continue to re-injure yourself if you don't figure out what the cause of the injury was. And so that would be my main piece of advice. And so I guess before we hop off here, what's your last piece of advice before or for anybody who is dealing with an injury, and how they can, I guess, like main takeaway, if somebody just tuned in right now, what would be the best thing that you could say to them?
Man, know that there's more pieces in play than just your physical and just more than the physical injury. And, the best thing you do is get a support system, and that it's temporary. But the more work you do on the front end to make sure things are, going to heal properly, the more work and more patience you have on the front end, the better your outcome will be.
And by the front end, you mean what exactly?
Yeah, just right after injury, either getting help or seeking out help or seeking out something to anything besides just sitting and accepting that you're injured.
Like what my dad was doing.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate all of this. Hopefully everybody listening feels a little, if you're dealing with an injury right now, hopefully this helped you a little bit. You have anything else you want to say before we hop off here?
That's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. Like I said, I hope everybody learned something, and you are going to the approach that you take with a current injury or a past injury that you already recovered from, or maybe didn't recover from the right way. Or eventually we all get hurt. That's just a part of being an active human. Nobody's going to be safe all the time. Stuff happens constantly. Accidents are a thing. And so the time is going to come. I always say you should prepare for a stormy day. Like, the rain is coming. And so having a plan in place, or being mentally prepared for when that happens, and knowing the approach that you're going to take, hopefully this episode helped you get a little bit of a better understanding for that. So, and if you guys want to check out any of our other episodes, make sure you guys are checking out. We drop episodes every single week. Also, if you guys want to work with a coach like Chania, we have coaches who are ready to work with you. There should be a link somewhere around here. If you guys want to click that, go sign up, and we are happy to help you get through injuries. We're happy to help you get in shape, help you build more confidence, whatever it is that you're struggling with, we are ready. So, Chania, again, thank you for being here. I had a good time.
Thank you.
Now, if you are looking for some extra support and you aren't looking to spend a fortune, you should consider working with one of our V-Shred certified coaches. We'll figure out your macros, we'll figure out your calories, we'll figure out what your custom meal plan will look like. And yes, we'll make sure that it contains your favorite foods. And basically all you do is you let your coach know what you like, what you don't like, because when we say custom, we mean it. And you get unlimited emails, you get weekly check-ins, you get access to our brand new coaching app where you can message them at any time about anything with any questions. Our coaches are here to help you reach your goals, and they care about your success. And so all the details about how it works is in the description down below. So check that out if you want to. But thank you again for tuning in. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of V-Shred's Better Body, Better Life podcast. Whether you're doing one of our programs, taking our supplements, or just doing things on your own, tune in every week for exclusive content with Vince, V-Shred trainers, and special guests as they share valuable tips around motivation, workouts, food, and living a healthier lifestyle. See you next time.